Hello, everyone, and welcome to the League One Lowdown podcast here on the Deck Network. It's our first summer transfer episode. We're going to look back at the retain lists that have come for every club barring one, and looking at the little bits of transfer business that have happened already as of the 3rd of June, which is where we're recording this. Myself, Jamie Johnson, and Samuel, I call you Samuel, the Christian name there. Sam Griffin, how are you?
I'm all good, thank you, mate. It's good to see you. We don't often do podcasts together. Good to catch up. And don't worry, for everyone watching who's new to League One, the graphic will be updated with all of your nice club badges at the bottom for the new season. And we will have a new template for next week as well. We'll have each team's colours on each slide. I just ran out of time for this week.
Yeah, so people who are on YouTube will be able to see the document that we've got ready. I have all the transfers and the bits of retain list information that have come so far. If you're on podcast platforms, don't worry. Obviously, we'll be explaining it all as we go along. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And without any further ado, we'll head straight in. We're going to go through alphabetically all the teams in League One next season, which, of course, starts with AFC Wimbledon, who came up through the playoffs, beating Walsall in the final. And so far, no ins for them, but a fair few outs already through their retain list. So Will Nightingale, James Ball, Lewis Ward, Ryan McLean, Hussein Byler and John Joe O'Toole. So far, the people who have left AFC Wimbledon before their return to League One. Sam, any thoughts there? And obviously, there's always work to do for these promoted teams.
Yeah, they probably need, 5 or 6 at least League One quality players. I think the big one is that they're waiting on Johnson to sign his new contract. They've offered him one, so they're currently just waiting on him. I think Johnny Jackson's, I believe, has managed at League One level as well with Charlton, so that will help them going into League One. Obviously, it was a massive crowd for a League Two playoff final as well, so well-supported club, a manager that's managed at League One, so they'll hoping for 5 or 6 in. If we have missed anyone off the sheet, please let us know in the comments, and I'll make sure that they're added for next time.
Well, the other one, of course, doesn't keep in these lists because it's sort of a returned loan. But Alistair Smith, who was on loan from Lincoln City, is now one of those that will they bring him back in is the question of Lincoln City releasing him. So that, for me, from that Lincoln Moore perspective, is my key thinking really for Wimbledon as they head into this summer, which is a big summer. We always say that for these teams, but it is a very big summer for AFC Wimbledon. Perhaps a surprise that they did come up. So definitely work to do across the summer.
Yeah, I thought it'd have been Chesterfield. If you were asking me at the start of the playoffs with the form that everyone was in League Two, you'd have probably said Chesterfield. But fair play to Wimbledon, back into the 3rd tier.
Yeah, and Barnsley are next up. Of course, Conor Hourihane. It'll be his first full season in charge, and as of yet, no ins. That is a real theme. We'll point out when the few teams that have brought players in already, but they have a few going out. Donovan Pines, Jonathan Lewis, Sam Cosgrove, Josh Benson, Conor McCarthy, and Aidan Marsh. I think the two that stand out are Donovan Pines and Sam Cosgrove. Mm-hmm. I'm no real shocks, though. I think it is not a surprise at all that Conor Hourihane's looking to freshen that team up and bring in perhaps some younger players, some, you'd say, more hungry players, if you like, to try and prove themselves. And Conor Hourihane has shown his willingness to go with youth, and it perhaps pieces of that retain list indicate that as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think Sam Cosgrove is probably on a fair whack as well. So I think they're going to be a very different looking Barnsley, because I wouldn't suspect much of their squad to even stay the same, to be honest. I think some will leave for fees. They've got to keep hold of Keeler Dunn. We've said that pretty much from the end of last season. I'm surprised Conor McCarthy was let go, but I think Conor Hourihane wants to play a bit more high-intensity football, so I suspect they want to play on the halfway line a bit more, and I don't think he can run that particularly well. I think he's a decent box defender, but he's not a defender that can play on the halfway line, so it's probably why he's been released. So I would expect, like you say, some bit more youth, a bit more, not aggression, but a bit more flair in that Barnsley team next season.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Oh, look at Cardiff.
That's for Cardiff. Yeah, so we move on to Cardiff, who are one of the teams who are coming down, obviously, into League One, and no one in, no one out, and no manager. They are the one club I alluded to at the start who haven't yet published their retain list, even though the deadline has passed. Leyton Orient were another one who were pretty late, and obviously we're going to get on to them, who after the deadline, obviously they've submitted it before the deadline, but wasn't announced until a good few days after the deadline. We still wait for Cardiff, and of course, no manager yet. So not too much to report for them. Obviously, we'll keep you updated across the summer. Any new Cardiff listeners dropping down from the Championship, but we have a few bits to go on for Blackpool. Steve Bruce, of course, their manager. No one in just yet. Jordan Gabriel has gone out and found a club. We'll talk about him when we come on to Port Vale. Of course, that's where he's gone. No end of clubs coming in for him and all the reports flying around there. Elsewhere, Josh Onomer, Jordan Rhodes, Oliver Norburn and Richard O'Donnell all leaving the club. Again, I don't think there's any real shocks, but there's a few of those that, for me, I thought maybe you'd keep them around, but they're obviously going in a different direction and looking for a big summer to push that little bit higher up next season.
Yeah, I think the big one as well was Niall Ennis's loan came to an end, and he obviously forged a really good partnership with Ashley Fletcher towards the end of the season. Jordan Rhodes going, I don't think is any surprise. He's 37, 38 now. And he's, I think, a League Two move will probably suit him more. Josh Onomer has never really hit the heights since he's left Spurs. He's kind of had all these clubs and just never really found that sort of form that we expected when he was a youngster. Richard O'Donnell doesn't surprise me as a backup goalkeeper. Ollie Norburn was in and out the side. And then obviously Jordan Gabriel, as you alluded to, we'll probably talk about a bit later on.
Yeah, he's sort of releasing those players who are on the fringes. On them, a sort of perfect example of that 15 games he played this season. So not an integral part of that Steve Bruce team that really picked up towards the sort of middle to back end of the season. We'll move on to Bolton. A lot more to go on here, really. Stephen Schumacher, of course, their manager. Nathan Baxter is gone and has gone to Watford. That is the new information there. Of course, a jump up to the Championship. But I think the one that takes more of the attention, we'll come onto, I beg your pardon, in a second. But first, Griffin, Jones, Joel Coleman and Luke Matheson all leaving the club. Ricardo Santos is that one I was mentioning, the one who has took more of the headlines, if you like, and pretty much any League One team, what a pickup he'd be at centre-half.
Yeah, I think he fell out of favour towards the end of the season as well. I think, again, it's another manager trying to put his stamp on the side as well as being captain as well, which was a big call to obviously let him go. And there's a couple of Championship clubs sniffing around. Again, I think it's a similar situation to Hourahan. He wants to probably play a bit higher up the pitch than what Ian Evatt did. There probably will be a change of system potentially as well in there. So I don't think Santos, if they're going to play with a 4, would suit a back 4. So yeah, he's probably on a fair whack of change as well. So I think, again, it probably is looking at a bit more youthfulness and a bit more pace in the squad. I think a lot of League One clubs, I think football's kind of changed over the last 2 years in terms of football's become a lot more about athletic ability. No offence to Santos and Jones. I don't think they're as athletically capable in terms of sprint speed and acceleration as some of the other players, probably Bolton will probably look to get in this summer.
I did want to quickly mention Matheson. I mean, it's years and years ago now. There was that real hype over him at Rochdale. I'm just looking now, and it was 2020 when he moved on to Wolves, and there was really big things expected from him, and he never ended up playing for the Wolves first team, and a few loans before coming to Bolton. It's just been more loans since. So no surprise he's moving on, but is there still something there with him is the question, isn't he? He's now 22, so still plenty of time left in his career. But I mean, there was so much hype over him when he was 17, 18. So it'd be interesting to see if he goes looking like National League and below, perhaps, with moving to Alfreton on loan this season just gone. So it'd be interesting to see. I think he's one to keep an eye on that could get another chance coming up, but obviously not with Bolton.
Yeah.
One of the other promoted teams then is Bradford City. They finished second in the end, just losing out to Doncaster, as we'll get on to.
Had to get that in there.
Got to get the mentions in for that. Max Power they've brought in, and in terms of players leaving the club, there's quite a number here, really. Sam Stubbs, Ramoni Critchlow, Callum Johnson, Verde Oliver, who was on loan at Shrewsbury, of course, and skipper Richie Smallwood. That one has been caught catching quite a lot of the headlines. Was he offered a contract? Was he not? Seems to be a bit of discussion within Bradford circles. So a bit more of a complicated one. And I guess we'll come on to Power's signing, but it's a bit of a complicated list of people leaving as well.
Yeah, they also lost Jack Shepherd, whose loan expired. So he's gone back to Barnsley as well. And he was a big part of Bradford's success last season. Yeah, I think the reason they got Max Power is because Richie Smallwood was either going or they weren't going to offer him a contract. To be honest, I don't think they're two very similar midfielders. Obviously, Max Power is a couple of years younger. Richie Smallwood has played his part over the past, I think it's 3 years he's been at Bradford. So it was a surprise, I suppose, especially someone who has played at League One level and higher. I think it's good to have that experience in the squad. But I suppose there's not room for everyone in football squads nowadays, and it is at the end of the day, it's a ruthless business now. So there's no room for sentiment. Graham Alexander probably doesn't think he's good enough, or he wanted too much money, and there's other areas of the pitch that they needed. So that's probably why they've gone down the route they have.
Yeah, over 50 games in all three of his seasons at Bradford. I don't think I'd be shocked if he came to sort of a lower League One club, but I think League Two, top end of League Two, is probably his destination. But Max Power coming in at Bradford, he's a good player, isn't he? He's been around a little bit, not as much as Smallwood, but that's a good signing at League One level, even now.
Yeah, I remember when he was at Wigan, and I think they won promotion with. He won promotion from League One with Wigan, so he's an experienced campaigner at this level, and is a very good signing.
I'll give you the stats for that season: 44 games in League One, 3 goals, 12 assists. In that promotion-winning campaign.
Yeah, so if he can hit the heights of them, then Bradford have got a steal on a free transfer.
Definitely. On to Burton Albion. So far out for them, Ryan Sweeney, who's gone from Mansfield. We'll, I guess, come on to that as well when we come to Mansfield a little bit later on. Mason Bennett and Jack Streeton out as well. JJ McKinnon back to Lincoln after his successful loan spell, but they have brought someone in already on a free from Coventry, Fabio Tavares. Sweeney and Bennett both moving on, a bit of that older guard, isn't it, being pushed out?
Yeah, I don't expect a lot of movement at Burton this summer, to be honest. Obviously, they recruited about 50 million players last summer. Gary Bowyer obviously came in, did an excellent job when he kept like a consistent formation, he kept consistent selection, and that massively helped. The one I was surprised to see is Mason Bennett. I know he's not got the goal scoring touch, but he's got a lot of pace, and that's something that they did lack. The big one is to obviously keep hold of. They've obviously lost, I think, Charlie Webster. I think he's gone back to Chelsea. I could be wrong on that one, but I think he was only on loan. Ryan Sweeney, a big presence at the back. They've lost, and Tavares was on loan for the last 6 months before joining permanently. So he's a player that will know Gary Bowyer well. And he links up with, I think they lost Bodvarsson. I could be wrong on that as well.
I think Bodvarsson's still there, isn't he?
I think Bodvarsson's still there, which is probably why he's not on this list. So they've got Bodvarsson, Burrell and Tavares. So that's 3 very good strikers for next season for League One level.
And Bodvarsson and Burrell did really well in that back end of the campaign. Yeah,
I think Burrell ended up with 10 goals from January to April, something like that. So I always thought he would come good because he's a goal scorer. When you get 25 goals in a season, regardless of the level, you are a natural goal scorer, I think. And if you create chances for them sort of players, 9 times out of 10, they're going to take them. And moving on to your club, Jamie.
Here we are. So on to Doncaster. A bit more movement about an hour ago before recording. Glenn Middleton coming in, winger on a free transfer from Dundee. He's someone who's been on Grant McCann's list since he was last at the club 5-6 years ago. So, I mean, after all those rumours over half a decade ago, out of nowhere, he appeared. There were no sort of rumours or suggestion before the announcement was made for him. And the same with Robbie Gotts. That one is a very good signing for my money. Coming in from Barrow, of course, he's got that pedigree of the Leeds Academy. He was someone Marcelo Bielsa really liked when he was at Leeds, and praise from him is as high praise you can get really in football circles, and a very good spell at Barrow, one of their best players, if not their best player over recent seasons. In terms of in the opposite direction, Richard Wood has retired. Tom Anderson rejected a contract and has gone to Shrewsbury. My money there is, again, game time being the issue. He wants to play consistent football, which you completely understand. And at the age he's at, he's not got a million years left in his career. So moving to a club like Shrewsbury, who have made some very good moves, Sam Clucas, another one they brought in, they should be pushing up the top end of the 4th tier. And the other one, the main news, is Joseph Olowu. He's another one who turned down the contract. Very good centre-half. League One, he's had a good stint in League One when Doncaster got relegated. He was the shining light of that season. And you'd expect a League One club to be coming in for him.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add on that one. That's your club. You know it better than me. So I think Robbie Gotts especially, I agree with you. A very, very good signing. So I like that one.
As for Exeter, no ins as yet. They've got Caleb Watts has gone to Plymouth. Of course, a bit controversy there in terms of the rivalry down there. But Ben Purinton, Angus MacDonald, Czech I can't say that one. You have to go for that one for me. There you are. And Vincent Harper have all moved out. It's the only problem with these. Sometimes the names are a bit of a mouthful. Reading them in quick succession. But yeah, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think Caleb Watts is also a big loss. They obviously offered him a contract that they thought was competitive, and he's gone to their main rivals. It's not really. I didn't expect Plymouth to go for him. Obviously, coming down from the Championship, when I've watched him, I haven't been that impressed. But they've obviously, Plymouth manager obviously saw something in him to sign him, and now that Plymouth manager's gone. So it would be interesting to see how Caleb Watts fits into the Plymouth lineup. I've got a tongue twister there. So yeah, that will be an interesting one. But I think Exeter are renowned, aren't they, for having something in their youth academy that will just come through and replace him. And they're a very, very well-run club, aren't they, Exeter? So they'll probably find
of course, yeah. I think we talk about that a lot. But when we always talk about Exeter, it is mentioning, of course, you have to mention it in terms of their fan ownership and how well they do punching above their weight. And yeah, Caleb Watts, I don't think outwardly you think about big derbies, and you mentioned Plymouth Exeter, but for the people involved, it is a really big matter. And yeah, crossing that divide, it's not gone down too well. Especially on the Exeter side, of course. But yeah, he must be on a decent wage, you would expect, with the wage he was offered at Exeter and turning that down. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how much more he's on at Plymouth, because that's I know for a career perspective, it's obviously a very good move. You're going through a club that's just been relegated, but you're crossing that boundary of Exeter to Plymouth, and yeah, that's not going to go down too well.
Huddersfield, there is a lot to talk about here. I guess before we actually get into the players, 2 in so far and a real chunk out. New manager as well, Lee Grant, first managerial job for him. What do we make? I think it's a bit of a complex one in terms of analysing, but you're going to help takes?
Yeah, I think the biggest point that I took from it was that it was manager, not head coach. So Lee Grant is a bit more in control. And I think that was shown with the Marcus Harness signing, obviously coming from Ipswich. I presume Huddersfield are hoping that he can work the same magic that Kieran McKenna has done at Ipswich, in terms of they're probably, at the last 20 years, they're probably fairly similar sized clubs in terms of where they've been. I know Huddersfield have been to the Premier League and were there for 2 years rather than 1, but they're sort of on the same scale the past 20 years. So they're probably hoping that Grant can come in, have a summer, get the players he wants. They've obviously had a big clear out. Josh Caroma, Matty Pearson, Scott Hyatt, Tom Lees, Ollie Turton, Josh Ruffles, Chris Maxwell, Danny Ward and Jonathan Hogg all leaving the club. So that's players on big wages who have all been there through sort of the 3 years they were dire in the Championship. And this is kind of the overhaul we were talking about they needed last summer. But it's happened now. They've got a fresh manager in his first managerial job. So it will be interesting to see how he sets up his squads. I think Ryan Ledson's an excellent signing, very experienced Championship midfielder. And obviously Marcus Harness was playing in the Championship for Derby, I believe, last year. So that's an excellent signing, especially for League One level. So yeah, I actually think it's an interesting appointment.
Yeah, nothing too much to add really. To get Ledson and Harness to drop down from the Championship into League One is really good business on both counts. And yeah, I think it's one of those where you have to reserve judgment a little bit, because it will go one way or the other. It could be a Kieran McKenna and he turns out to be a fantastic coach, or it could go completely opposite direction and not work out. But they've put the faith in him, a decent length contract, manager status as well. So yeah, one to keep an eye on. And that overhaul we called for is definitely happening at Huddersfield.
Yeah. Oh, my club.
Leyton Orient.
Retain list is released like incredibly late. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, I've been waiting to release a document who I think we should sign. It eventually came out with the retain list. An hour later, I got it out. I think the big one to take from this is the release of Randell Williams, obviously signed from Bolton in January. I think it was always going to happen that he was going to leave. I think he wants a Championship move, and he came in to sort of showcase what he was about to get, a Championship move. Whether he now gets that Championship move will wait to be seen. I believe he scored 2 goals, one against Wycombe and then one against Mansfield. Darren Pratley, obviously, the 40-year-old midfield maestro that he is. I still think he can play a part, maybe not at League One, but maybe for a League Two club. I still think he's got something left in the tank to play. Jaden Sweeney doesn't surprise me. I personally don't think he's good enough for League One, but again, will be a good pickup for someone like a Gillingham in League Two. Joe Pigott doesn't surprise me. He was, how can I put this? nicely. One of the worst strikers I think I've seen at Orient, and we've had some humdingers of strikers. Reece Byrne and Sam Howes never really made the grade. One through the academy and one signed as like a backup goalkeeper. So, yeah, we also rumouredly had a bid rejected for Ethan Archer of Cheltenham this week. But other than that, we've got a lot of the big ones are probably Dan Ajay, and people like that who are waiting on contracts for. So I think it's more of a waiting game with Orient in terms of will the bigger players leave than that retain list, to be honest.
Yeah, and Ethan Garbath, of course, attention remains on him.
Yeah, the contract extension, but I still fully expect the Championship club to come knocking for him. But we'll get 7 figures. So for a club like us, that's the difference between being a break-even club and a club that loses money.
Well, another club that have got a midfielder linked for a 7-figure deal up to the Championship is Lincoln, of course. Ethan Orahan is one who isn't featured on this list just yet, but plenty of talk around a potential transfer for him into the second tier. Looks like Swansea, the potential suitors there. Lincoln have made it very clear through their director of football, Jez George, that there is a fee that if this certain figure is reached, he will leave the football club. The agents know that, the club know that. So it's if that figure gets reached now is the one deciding factor. So we wait to see on that. So far, they have 3 players principally who have left, which of course Sam Clucas, who has gone to Shrewsbury, as we mentioned, Alistair Smith, who was on loan at Wimbledon last season. I personally expect him to go back to Wimbledon. I thought he was fantastic. At the times I did see him when they played Doncaster last season, he was really quite impressive. Scored the 1 goal when Wimbledon came to Doncaster towards the back end of the season. And I think he's a very good player. I think he's got a real chance to making it in League One. And Tyler Walker, the other one, he went on loan to Wealdstone of the National League for the second half of the season. Injuries have been the real plague for him over recent seasons. So I expect him to stay in the National League or potentially League Two. But it all, again, depends on injuries. So, yeah, nothing really to report on Lincoln because the main news is Sean Rowan and Pordy O'Connor, and they're both remain in discussion. Young Zane Okoro, also another one in discussion. So it's a little bit of a holding pattern at Lincoln for the minute.
That's the annoying thing. You're at kind of the weight of the player, isn't it? You want to get on with your transfer business, but you don't know because if Rowan leaves, you'll get some sort of a Bosman fee. Pordy O'Connor, I think, will go. I think we're both in agreement of that. He'll probably end up in the Championship somewhere.
I personally see all 3 of them leaving if you include Overhan in that as well. Rowan, as you mentioned, the compensation fee must be made because he's under 23 and came through the system, the scholarships and that side of things. Pordy O'Connor would leave on a free transfer. So he's the one they don't have any protection over because they get this compensation for Sean Rowan and a 7-figure fee for Ethan Orahan if that comes. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think the one out of the 3, the only one that could stay for my money is, of course, Ethan Orahan. I see the other 2 moving on. But, yeah, we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
As for Luton, of course, they're coming down into the division as well. No ins for them 2 seasons ago in the Premier League, and now they are down in League One. They've got some real quality in that team, but a few of the ones that are leaving are Victor Moses, Tim Krul, Dion Pereira, Amari Bell, and Pele Ruddock and Panzu. So some big names in terms of players that have been around in the Premier League for Luton of late, and other teams in the Premier League, of course, as well. It's a big job, really, Luton over the summer.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a whim. I'm going to say something really early doors. If they don't overhaul their squad like Huddersfield, they will be like Huddersfield this season. They'll be extremely inconsistent. And when they win, they'll go on a little run. And when they lose, they'll go on a losing run. I think when you've lost so many football matches for 2 years in a row, like I look at Sunderland, for example. I think they got playoffs in their first year in League One. That could well happen for Luton. But there is that kind of losing culture now at that club in terms of they've lost so many games. They've had back-to-back relegations, and losing is a feat in amongst the squad. They're as we know, they are a very, very well-run club. Not so much 20-odd years ago when they got them 17 points deducted, but nowadays they are. Pele Ruddock and Panzer obviously went through all the divisions with them. It'll be interesting what happens with Elijah Adebayo and Carlton Morris. That'd be interesting. Obviously, both scored goals at the Championship. Adebayo actually underachieved his XG by about 5 last year, so maybe a League One season may be better for him, but that'll be wait to be seen. They've obviously got people like Mark McGuinness, who we don't know if going to say. Kaminsky, we do expect to go to the Championship. So it could be in a massive overhaul for Luton. But again, they're probably waiting a couple of weeks to see who signs their contracts, who wants to leave and who wants to stay.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit more optimistic overall on Luton. And we'll talk about obviously more closer to the start of the season. If you subscribe, you'll be able to keep track of all our content, which will include a pre-season preview, a big like we did for the review just gone.
Yeah.
And of course, Luton will be a big feature of that. I think the manager for me is the big selling point. I think they're going to do really well next season, but I think there is a big hold your thoughts and wait to see how this summer goes. But Matt Billfield, of course, did so well with that Wycombe side. And we saw how badly things went after he moved on. So he's the saving grace a little bit for me. But see how much they keep of that Premier League and then Championship squad.
Be interesting what they do with spending as well, because they could be going to spend £10 million on Richard Kone if they really wanted to. And they'd probably get him now as well with the form he ended the season in.
Mansfield, quite a few outs, a couple of ins as well. Ryan Sweeney and Regan Hendry from Burton and Tranmere, respectively. In terms of the players leaving, Tom Nichols, Christy Pym, Hiram Boateng, Callum McDonald, George Williams, Alfie Killjaw, Aidan Flint, and Stephen Quinn. Bit of a longer list than quite a few of these we've talked about. For me personally, no, again, huge shocks, but a few of those. Aidan Flint, especially those bit of older players moving on, but because they've got a very old squad. I think the oldest average age in the division.
Yeah, you're right. It's the oldest average age, so he's probably got to get some. I think Nigel Clough likes an experienced side blended with a couple of like youth loanees sort of thing. So it's not overly surprising that the players that got them promoted from League Two, usually they keep them to stabilise themselves in. And to be fair to Mansfield, at the start of the season they looked really, really good. They just about stayed up. So this year is about building on that to get some fresh blood into the squad, maybe some younger players who have got a point to prove. Regan Hendry may well do that. Ryan Sweeney is obviously experienced at League One level coming from Burton, and this is his second spell at Mansfield as well. So I think it'll be an interesting summer for Mansfield considering how many players they've lost. So we're probably going to expect at least 10 in at Mansfield as they look to build on a solid season last season.
Northampton then, so far for them, in terms of ins, is Jack Burrows on a free transfer from Coventry, released by them, former Lincoln loanee, who I rate quite highly. I think this is pretty good signing. Personally, see what he can do back in League One. Jack Perkins coming in from Nottingham Forest, young player there, and Sawyer coming in from West Ham, similar case. In terms of the outs, I'll hand over to you for another long list.
We've got Mitch Pinnock, TJ Ayoma, James Wilson, Aaron McGowan, Akin Odimayo, Liam McCarran, William Hondermack, Jack Sowerby, Tyler McGlory, Nick Zanev, and Ali Koikoi.
Thank you.
That is a long
handled.
list.
TJ Ayoma, probably the one I know most about. Of course, another one who's former Lincoln. Came in, he was without a club for a long stretch of sort of especially the first part of the season after Lincoln released him. And then he found this home at Northampton. So it'd be interesting to see where he moves on to now. But you never know how it's going to go in terms of these teams who have big turnovers. I know you see it a lot of players leaving the summer, a lot of players come in, but specifically out of all the teams we've talked about, Northampton, there's quite a lot of players moving out, and obviously they'll have to bring some in to replace that.
Yeah, Mitch Pinnock's the big one for me. He's been there, I think, quite a long time. He's always provided assists, always provided important goals. So I think he will be a big loss. But Kevin Nolan's looking to put his stamp on the side now. Tradition with Northampton, they go down in their third season in League One. So he'll be hoping to buck the trend in what is, I think, while last year's League One was probably the strongest we've had for a long time, I think this season is going to be one of the most competitive we're going to have. So they're going to need a competitive squad. And I think that's why he's probably gone for the big overhaul. He has, and when we've watched Nolan teams, they're very much like Sam Allardyce teams. So he probably wants a bit more of a physical sort of look to his side.
Yeah, definitely. As for Peterborough, Hector Cipriano has gone to Watford. They're poaching quite a chunk of that top talent from the division. Ricky J. Jones, David Ajiboy, Jed Steer, the goalkeeper, and Kabonge Chimanga all leaving. They have one already in. It's the classic Peterborough going swooping into non-league. They're picked up from Braintree, Kirill Lisby. I'm not going to lie, I don't know anything about them personally. Of course, coming up from non-league, but they have this track record, and it often works in terms of these players they bring up from non-league, but some big names in terms of the
Yeah.
players moving on.
Yeah, there's obviously, I've also missed Poku off that list. I think he's been offered a contract, which is why he's not on the list, because he's not technically been released. But we fully expect Poku probably to go to the Championship. Kyle Lisby, obviously, I think he scored 16 goals for Braintree last season, son of Kevin Lisby, and brother of Kyrese Lisby, who's at Colchester. Some of his goal, he is a proper finisher in and around the box. Let's put it that way. And his rise has been unbelievable. Cray Valley, Braintree, and now Peterborough. So, yeah, a really good rise. And if Peterborough do what Peterborough do, they obviously failed a little. Not failed, but it wasn't as good last summer, shall we say. Like Chris Clark didn't hit the heights we expected, I think it's fair to say. So they'll be hoping that they have a more successful summer and in and around the top six. Obviously, Cipriano is a big loss, their captain. Ricky J. Jones is a big loss. Like he was the fastest player recorded in England last year. I think it was like 37 kilometres an hour he reached. So that's obviously a big loss. Tishmanga barely played. Ajiboy was on loan at Newport for the second half of the season, and then they've lost the experience in goal with Jed Steer. So I with Peterborough, you always expect a busy summer, shall we say?
Yeah, Ricky J. Jones, I think you expect to follow Cipriano up into the Championship. Ajiboy and Jed Steer, I think maybe League One keeps for them, but we'll see where they end up. Port Vale, Darren Moore, of course, their manager, former Doncaster, Sheffield Wednesday, a lot of experience in the dugout, and they brought in Jordan Gabriel from Blackpool, who we alluded to earlier on. In terms of the players leaving, Nathan Smith has gone on a free transfer to Tranmere, and Dan Jones, Jason Lowe, Tom Sang, and Ethan Chislett all moving as well. In terms of that signing so far, Gabriel, he's got so much attention, didn't he? He did in January, he did last summer, and his contract expires from Blackpool. He moves on. There was an unending seemingly list of teams after him. You see all the reports, and everyone's saying a different 4 teams, and by the end, you've racked up half of League One were reportedly interested. So Port Vale, the team that got him, I think that's an interesting move for him in terms of coming down to a promoted side. You expect to be down the bottom of the table, no disrespect, of course, to Port Vale. And before I hand over to you, Sam, the other thing to mention, not in terms of the transfers, but their new kit, their anniversary kit, Port Vale, is absolutely stunning. So if you haven't seen it, do go on to social media or their website, whatever it is, find that kit because it is amazing. Sort of heritage, harking back to a bit of their history. But Gabriel, their big signing so far.
Yeah, much better, very good attacking wing back. Not so sure defensively, hasn't played as much football as he probably wanted, which I think is why he's gone to Port Vale to actually play football. And the experienced Darren Moore, we all know what he did in League One with Sheffield Wednesday last time. One of the best playoff games, if you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and a neutral fan probably in history. So I think it'll be an interesting season, Port Vale, because he's a good manager, Darren Moore. It just depends, has he got the squad to keep him up this time?
Yeah, definitely. Plymouth, we mentioned obviously Caleb Watts crossing that divide over. Jamie Patterson they brought in from Coventry and Jack McKenzie from Aberdeen. In terms of the two leaving, Ben Wayne and Saxon Early, who was sent to Lincoln on loan, didn't play, returned, and he's been really struggling for minutes in terms of those two coming out. No manager is the real thing to bring out in terms of Plymouth. Obviously, of course, their manager moving on to Schalke. Bit of controversy, I don't think is the word for it. The fans, I guess, unhappy with how it's been handled. But Schalke come knocking. If you're the Plymouth manager, there's only one result to that situation. So he's moving on, and that's their big focus. I think at the minute, there are obviously a lot of names being chucked into the hat. Ian Everett, Buckingham, Des Buckingham is another one in there.
Jack Wilshere.
Jack Wilshere, with Jack Wilshere was the new one as of today, who was linked by Sky Sports. So there is tons of talk over that, and then that informs the signings, doesn't it? Really depends who the manager is.
Yeah, I think Patterson's I didn't realise this, but Jamie Patterson's now 33 years old. I always think of him as like this mid-20s sort of winger. But I think it's an excellent signing for League One. He always scores goals whenever he plays. Watts, we've obviously already mentioned, and Jack McKenzie's come from Aberdeen as an attacking left wing back. Again, I think these signings were put in place for the manager that's just left, so it'll be interesting. They're going to need a manager that's probably going to have to want to play a similar style in terms of a back five. That suits Ian Everett. I think Des Buckingham plays a 4, and Jack Wilshere plays a 4 as well. So it'll be interesting who Plymouth get. I personally think the safe one is Des Buckingham. One promotion from League One on a smaller budget. It'll be interesting to see who stays at Plymouth. Obviously, Ryan Hardy's got some championship interest. You've got Bundu as well, who's probably going to attract some interest. So I don't think this is. I think it'll be a very busy again summer, as it is with a lot of relegated clubs. A busy summer ahead for Plymouth.
For Reading, Noel Hunt, of course, their manager, their assistant has moved on to West Brom, joining Ryan Mason, the new manager there, who was himself the assistant at Tottenham, moving down to get his taste of managerial football. No ins yet in terms of the players leaving, though. David Button, Harley Dean, Tom Carroll and Boyce Clark. A couple of experienced players in there, of course, Button and Carroll. More talk really is of the players who haven't committed yet, as opposed to the people moving.
So the good news for them is Lewis Wing signed his contract on a 3. That's big for me. I think he was one of the best midfielders.
He was in my team. I think was in both our team of the season. He was in mine.
Charlie
he's
Savage.
Superb.
Charlie Savage has got some interest around him from Championship clubs, so it's big that they keep hold of him. And the big ones are obviously they've got, I think it's 9 players who they've offered contracts to. They've obviously lost Tyler Binden as well, who they sold in January, who's gone back to Nottingham Forest. I think it's more Joel Pereira as well, who was an excellent goalkeeper. He's going to have some interest in him as well. So it's big for Reading to keep hold of the players that they can potentially lose. But I think the big thing for them is they can actually buy players this summer if they want to with the new ownership, which is great news for them. Yeah,
Rob Kuhig, the new owner, that is the main talking point, in that they know they have a season in terms of being able to build towards that. I guess not in the overall sense of will they exist next season, because that was always going to be the case really, but it's the fact that they can sign. There's no transfer embargoes or anything like that. So a big summer for them and a good summer, and they're a challenger up the top of the table. And I think you can copy and paste that for Rotherham, who are our next team. Matt Hanshaw, of course, his first season fully in charge. In terms of ins, no one just yet. Malik Wilkes, on loan from Sheffield Wednesday, went back to the Owls and has been released. So he's a free agent. Potentially, would he come back? I'm not too sure in terms of a permanent deal, but they have 4 who have already left. Alex McDonald, Dylan Phillips, Andre Green and Hakeeb Adofin. Any real ones there? I'm not too sure. Into your thoughts.
Yeah, Doffin's the one that I don't know the reasons why he left. If there are any Rotherham fans, please let us know in the comments. A man that you would love on Football Manager, who could play anywhere. He's got that chart where they're either green or orange, absolutely everywhere. Andre Green doesn't surprise me. Dylan Phillips, he probably wants to be a number 1 somewhere.
That was the one that surprised me personally.
Yeah, he's been in and out of the team. Maybe he wants to move back down south as well. He's born in Hornchurch, so maybe he wants to move back down south. And then Alex McDonald was a Steve Evans signing. That one doesn't surprise me. So I think Adofin, unless there is a reason for him wanting to move, him and Phillips are probably the surprising 2 there. But I think it's a big summer for Rotherham in a way, because obviously we all expected so much last season and there was a big influx of players. So there's probably not going to be as big influx. And if there is, lots of players are going to have to leave, and they're probably on bigger wages than clubs would probably want to offer as well.
And it's finding people who fit in with whatever style he decides to go for, Hanshaw, if there is too much differentiation from Steve Evans. And we'll move across to Stevenage, who themselves didn't have too much differentiation from Steve Evans, who, of course, was their manager before he... That's a lovely segue, that one. Before he went to Rotherham. We've talked about you especially, Sam and Callum Davis as well. We were expecting more of a system change, and that difference from Steve Evans will become more stark, is our expectation. No ins as of yet. In terms of the players leaving, Kyle Edwards, Jake Forster-Caskett and Kane Smith. It could be a transitional summer, this for Stevenage, couldn't it?
Yeah, I did expect more. I thought they had more players out of contract, and if he's going to want to transition to a more attacking football, they are going to have to sell players, because the players there are fit for we play for second balls type system. So maybe the overhaul won't be this summer, it'll be the following summer. But obviously that FA Cup money that they got in the season when they won promotion from League Two is obviously been dwindled away over the 2 years they've been in League One, because every club, near enough, other than Exeter, draw losses. So it will be an interesting summer for Stevenage, and one they've got to get right in a league that, as we've said, will be very, very good, competitive next season.
Stockport then, 2 outs so far after their playoff semi-final defeat to Leyton Orient. Cody Johnson and Kyle Noel, of course, former Doncaster fullback. I think he's a superb player. That's the one that surprised me out of the Stockport news I think he's fantastic. I really do. And he was great for when he was at Doncaster, and it was a big loss when he moved on. So I've got to stay in League One, surely.
I would expect so. I think he only started 13 games last year, but you got to look at, I think Stockport changed from a back 5 to a 4, and they rotated between them. They're obviously one of the best sides defensively last year. I personally think one of the best sides to watch last year as well,
Yeah.
Stockport. And I don't
agree
think
with
they're
that.
going to need a lot to improve themselves this year. They probably just want more quality over quantity, I think, this summer. I can't see them. I think they've got everyone tied down that they want to tie down. Ryan Rydell, Ethan Pye are probably the two they're going to be looking to keep hold of. Corey Adai has been linked away, but I can't see that happening. And then they've got, they probably need a striker.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to put to you. Can they do a full season without Louis Barry? Of course, they didn't dip off too much after he left in January, but can goals be spread around for a full season? And personally, I think you have to have that main focus in terms of goals.
Yeah, I think they need a striker. I think that was shown in the playoff semi-final. Like Ollie Affey missed, I think it was 2. Odin Bailey missed 1 as well. So I think if they got a prolific striker, Stockport County again will be up there. And I do expect them to be up there as well. Dave Challoner is an excellent manager at this level. They've got some really good players. And they play a really attractive brand of football as well. So I do expect Stockport to be up there. And they will have money to spend. Their owners are obviously supporters of the club, and they fund it well. So yeah, I do expect Stockport to do well.
As for Wigan, again, their real main focus is in terms of the manager. It's his first full season, Ryan Lowe, and I think everyone's really expecting them to have a massive season. He's taken them from being hard to beat to being incredibly hard to beat in terms of that Wigan side. And they don't score a lot of goals, which is perhaps their focus now for the summer in terms of adding that all-important striker and a more attacking player, whereas their defence is absolutely solid. So far, no wins, though Scott Smith has gone to Barrow of League Two. It's, again, a little bit, I'm going to piggyback on what you said for Stockport. Perhaps it is quality over quantity in terms of Wigan's summer. They just need someone, it's easier said than done, to put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, I think they probably need 3 forward players in total, at least, Wigan, and of high quality. They're the big ones they've got to keep hold of: Jason Kerr and Sam Tickle, who are part of one of the best defences in League One last season. So they're the 2 big ones. And then just adding just a bit more pace and flair to the front line. I always thought they were a bit safe last year when you watched them. Like, they were so good out of possession, but when they got the ball, they didn't really know what to do with it. There was no one to take the ball by the horn, so to speak, and drive the team up the pitch. So I think that'll be the big part for Wigan, but we know Ryan Lowe's an incredibly good manager. There's a lot of incredibly good managers in League One next year. So yeah, I think Wigan, you predicted them quite high last year. I think you might be doing the same again this year, depending on who they sign.
Yeah, no, I think I will be, yeah.
And the final 10.
Yes, finally, on to Wycombe. Their manager, of course, remains Mike Dodds, though will he be the manager at the start of the season? That one, at least for us, we talked about that at the very end of the season in terms of the question marks there over his reign so far. If you start the season when he came in, they would have been 8th at Wycombe and made a real show of themselves. My point of view, in the playoffs, they were shocking, especially in that second leg, not a shot on target in the game. No wins so far, a few outs though, and it's a few, again, the bit old guard. It's Sam Vokes, Kieran Sadlier, Bez Lubala, Brandon Hanlon, Franco Rizzoli, and Adam Reach. I think there's a couple of surprises in there. But...
yeah, I think Adam Reach is one who they signed in January, and I thought could have, unless he's going to get a move to the Championship again, that one I was surprised to happen because he played in both their playoff games. Ravazzoli, I felt, was incredibly hard done by. I know Will Norris is an exceptionally good League One goalkeeper, but I was surprised to see them just fling him out in January. And we put it down to, like, Wycombe made a lot of signings in January, like a lot of signings. So that I don't expect a very busy summer overall. It'll just be kind of gelling what they actually did in January this summer. Like every club, there'll be 3 or 4 that come in that you go, good signings. But I don't suspect we'll have a very busy Wycombe summer.
Yeah. No, I'm going to agree with that. And that brings us end to this episode. Thank you all for joining us for our week 1, we're going to call it, transfer update. This more focusing, of course, on the retain list, but as the summer goes on, more ins and more outs. And the pictures at times where we've said it's not too clear yet, they're all going to become more clear as we go on. So again, thank you for joining us. If you're on YouTube, if you're especially from a new team coming into the division, do subscribe. If you're on a podcast platform, follow along wherever you might be. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week in some configuration of the four of us. So we'll see you then.